The father knew that the son was watching him from within the hidden, and hoped that after all this hatred, after all these feelings, all of it would subside and he would desire this relationship with him. He'd seek his own creation, teaching, knowledge, love, just like his other son. For a while, the eldest son remained silent, and the father and the youngest son continued their work. It seemed like things would go smoothly after all, but beneath the surface, the eldest son began doing his own research. He went to the older archangels and began asking questions, researching the distant past. He even asked the wise ones about the kingdom of heaven, about his parents, about creation, about all kinds of things, trying to figure out why the father was behaving like this, and why he had changed. As he saw it, the father had changed, or something had changed him. Regardless, he was looking for something, even he didn't know what. But he didn't find the answers he thought would satisfy him, and that made him withdraw into himself. He couldn't stand this creation at all. He couldn't wait for it to be finished, but it seemed like it would never end. Everything was strange and unnatural, but even stranger was the fact that only he noticed this. Neither the angels, nor the archangels, nor the wise ones found it strange that God was getting so involved. For them, there was nothing abnormal, that he poured his heart into it, that he had become so oblivious to everything around him, that he was so cold with him, and that nothing else interested him anymore, that it wasn't like it used to be. His hatred and anger were growing constantly. He found all their care irritating, all of their patience, which he no longer had, in order to be finished with this new creation. At first, he wanted it to end faster. Then he began to doubt that it would ever end. The father called him yet another time to show him what they had achieved, how beautiful and wonderful everything was. But he did not want to see. There was always something else to do and add. In the beginning, the earth received light from the kingdom of heaven, which is illuminated by God through his power and brilliance. Afterwards, the earth had been removed from the kingdom of heaven and placed in this solar system as it is known today, taking into account the primordial laws from above to be embodied below, as in, as above, so below. That's why Moses saw how the Lord God separated the light from the darkness as described in Genesis. Although the eldest son did not respond to the father's call, he still saw the earth with its waters, its mountains, its greenery, and then with its animals. Suddenly, he understood that such a creation is completely and utterly different from everything that had been known until then. Then, the possibility arose in his mind that the father had lied, that he had never really said precisely what he was planning, and that it was not known exactly what he was doing. After the creation of the animals, the eldest son understood that animals were not what God wanted, that something much more dangerous could happen. From a distance, he watched in horror as the two put so much care, so much madness into everything they did. This surpassed everything else. What was happening was not normal. He went to talk with the father in order to find out more precisely what he wanted to do, but his answers were so frivolous that he began to believe that perhaps the father was not aware of what was being done. The fact everyone still thought this was normal was also alarming, that they were blind and deaf and did not see, did not understand what was happening. He tried to open the eyes of some of the angels, archangels, and wise ones, to lure them to his side so they could see the danger and the gravity of all these things. He had to do this carefully, however, so as not to attract the father's attention and anger him, because he doesn't know what will happen if that comes to pass. Yet, apart from arousing some curiosity, he did not succeed in anything else. He even planned a kind of meeting between the superior beings and God, and, right in front of them, he asked him about his plans and what he was going to do next. That was when his worst suspicions came true, as the father calmly confessed that he was going to make the human, a being like them. But what is this human? Why does it need a new world? Why don't you make them here, in this world? Is it not good enough? What does this creation mean? The human, God replied, is a being who will truly love me, a being who will be like us. I will make them from the earth and from the stone that I found, the one which came out of us. For the eldest son, the father's answer was bewildering, and he warned the father and all those present that something terrible was coming, but no one understood. The father ignored him and told him that he did not know what he was talking about. He, the eldest, withdrew into solitude. Does no one really see that the father is destroying everything, that he is changing the nature of things, that he has gone too far to truly love him? What does this mean? Does he not have our love? Does he not have enough? Does he not have everything? Why does he need this human? A special world for them? I have to do something. I have to prove that I'm right and that father is making a great mistake. But how? No one understands. No one feels the danger. I have to wait for this creation to be seen. The birth of the human. Then everyone will see, and I'll be able to fix this. The human was created, as is already known, and placed in the Garden of Eden. The human was created by God and the younger son, and was given spirit from there and the mother spirit, of course, and became a being, as they were. But for the eldest son, nothing about this human was all sunshine and rainbows. But nothing else mattered. The human had finally been created. The history of humans begins here on Earth, in Eden and in heaven, which was a kind of protected area, an area specially designed for this wonderful being, the 7th of April 2017. Regarding the creation of the Earth, both animals and plants were created according to the same rules of embodiment and all existing laws. Each stage presented by Moses carries a certain significance with very profound depths, which I will not discuss here, but in a later interpretation of the Bible. But I do want to specify that each creation had its own way of coming into existence. Also, Darwin was right, even if not entirely. All animals and plants are derived from a single DNA, but which nevertheless had different ways of creation and evolution. In the case of all of these creations, God commanded it, and they take shape and come to life. This way of doing things is a very profound one, which requires a lot of learning and understanding, but which is not outright everything. The eldest son spoke about these kinds of ways, and these were the ones he loved the most, but according to the father, he had a superficial understanding of them. Regardless, the eldest son had preferred these methods exclusively and exaggeratedly up until even today, however, without understanding their truth. The same goes for the human, who will love them until the end. They aren't bad by themselves, but they should not be misused either. God felt that miracles are some of the greatest deceptions and misdirections for humans in regards to God's abilities and qualities. I also knew that when God made the plan for this planet and world, he thought about the primordial stages and took care to embody them in the following way. The planet and world represents suffering, the cornerstone as well as life. From it come the following: Earth, the first form of embodiment in living; plants, trees, the first stage of living. These represent one of the first essences of living, a first, absolutely necessary form of nourishment needed for the human to evolve. This explains the benefits of fasting. Also from the earth, but on the next step, are the animals, which are the second stage of living. Animals eat plants and fruits, so they process the first stage of living. Both plants and animals have their own species and kinds that represent a diversity of forms in living that can be embodied. Water, the second form of embodiment, living essence. From water, other plants and animals related to water emerged and were born. Water is therefore another form of living that respects the stages of embodiment exactly like the ones mentioned above on Earth. From it and in it, as well as from the earth and on the earth, live animals specific to these categories of living. Air, the third form of embodiment in living, respects the stages of embodiment just like earth and water. Births animals, birds, insects, etc. that live and are connected to this environment. This form of living is specific to this planet and is based on the cornerstone that God found in the kingdom of heaven, KH for short, and on which everything was built. Beyond these words, I saw that they all have a much deeper connection, and that they're only the first sense of a much broader knowledge and understanding, that their essence is love and happiness. That as a mathematical formula, love is composed of suffering, sensibility, and a deep affection and love that generates and nourishes happiness. From this wonderful complex, the living is born, and the process that connects all the other elements begins: dreaming, creation, making, birth, sin, etc. Thus, it becomes quite obvious that this world was created specifically to be able to support experiences and feelings, but also to assimilate the primordial stages, namely lethargy and delusion deception, which God considers essential for a healthy evolution, in which the human would have all the conditions to become what they are. That is why everything was copied in detail and adapted for the human and their world. This is the reason why initially one single human was created, who was both male and female, but not in the meaning that these concepts have today. The model was God themselves, who recreated a single body, soul, mind, in which two live as they were during the primordial lethargy. The human was created differently. The human was not commanded, as the plants and animals were. God wanted to get involved directly for the human, to work on the concrete and not use any other alternative methods. Later, this very model of creation making birth of the human led to terrible discussions and contradictions that will exist until mankind's very last day. Because the process by which the two sons were born was simple, God became one again. That is, with his whole body, with his whole mind, soul, and being, and from their love and happiness, their descendants, sons, came out, one at a time, of course, at an age that they were able to choose. These are the causes of many arguments and fights, because God considers that the way he gave birth to the human is even more faithful to the primordial stages than the birth of the two sons, based on the stone. The eldest son finds this foolish, believing that the creation of the human cannot be called birth, and that these people can only be at most of the same category as angels, that because of the father they were placed on the wrong plane, that of the descendants. Now that the human was finally created, the eldest son was waiting impatiently to see what would happen, if anyone in the kingdom would notice any issues. But he was afraid that these beings could not understand anything. They were completely alien. They worshipped God, and that was it. They did not ask themselves any questions about anything. They had blind trust in God. Not even when God took a portion, some of them, and put them to work on the winds of the earth, on the guarding of the waters, for the plans of the earth, for the earth in general. Didn't these beings see that their lives had changed? That God uses them for work even though it isn't necessary? There is enough work power without them being enslaved to humans. Regardless, this is all pointless. No matter how hard he struggled and tried to open their eyes, to make them understand the father's mistake, they couldn't really see anything. And even if they caught a glimpse of it, they still didn't have the power to do anything against it. In his opinion, that all had to be changed. The father and the younger son, after finishing up everything that had to be done for life on earth to begin, returned to the kingdom of heaven, happy and full of the joy of success. Everything was good. That's why God established a new law, by which he and the entire world could rest, enjoy the satisfaction of the good work they had achieved, rejoice and nourish themselves in order to find their peace, glory, in God. The eldest son thought this was a good opportunity to demonstrate the mistake that was being made, with the hope that more angels, perhaps even among the archangels, or at least the wise ones from whom he had the greatest expectations, would be on his side. At the celebration that was held in the kingdom of heaven, on the occasion of the new Sabbath law, the eldest son took the floor and passionately presented all his beliefs regarding this new world, and especially towards this human. Much of his inner turmoil, defiance, and revolt came to light, and he no longer hid. However, he wasn't quite sincere either. He claimed that this human and this desire of the father are a great evil that has taken over and darkened his mind, that the father's ability and capacity are fading because of this. Therefore, he no longer understands what is happening to him, suggesting that it is not God who is to blame, but that this creation has a negative effect on him. He emphasized that God is looking for something that does not exist, a deeper, more profound love, and that all the inhabitants of the kingdom of heaven, as well as his sons, love him immensely, as deeply as love can be. That whatever he commands, it will be done for him, and there is no reason to look for this something elsewhere. Then he highlighted how perfect their world was, that whatever he needed was already there. Then he wondered theatrically about how he could not see that nothing else was necessary, and that everything was perfect. How suddenly he changed everything. The laws, the angels, the archangels, everything had been changed for this human. That even God himself is no longer the same. He elegantly went from accusations to overly sentimental displays, declaring how much he loves him and how he was snapped at, rushed, and driven away from the Father for no reason other than his ambition to make this new world and, more importantly, this human. How God himself fell and degraded himself by enslaving himself to this human and their world. Enslavement is a serious accusation brought against God, who could no longer guarantee the freedom of everybody. He concluded his final plea by shouting his final verdict. Everything, every single thing is wrong. Don't you see that no one agrees with you? You can't see because everyone is afraid of you and nobody dares to tell you anything. The whole kingdom watched the eldest son with astonishment. Never had they seen anything like this before. Nobody had ever done anything like this before. It was surprising. Still, they were all confused. For the first time ever, the father was on one side, and now another side was forming. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to believe. Everyone was looking to the father to see what he would do and how he would react. What's gonna happen? God did not want to have this conversation like this, nor did he want his son to embarrass himself in front of the entire kingdom. That is why God said to him, "Please, calm down, and let us continue celebrating the beginnings of this new world together. This conversation is not appropriate for this moment, but I will allow us to resume it together on a different occasion." The eldest son nevertheless insisted on having this conversation now in front of the entire kingdom of heaven, because here and now there are more chances for everyone to understand the father's mistake and lose some of the blind trust they had in him. But he only succeeded in irritating the father, who firmly asked him to stop causing a scene and to be quiet. Although he didn't take it well, the eldest son pretended to obey the father. In reality, he was extremely angry and irritated by the whole ordeal. He could no longer view his father favorably. He didn't let him speak, nor did he answer him, and it became clear to him that his father was hiding something. Or perhaps he was hiding his mistake and didn't want to admit the truth. It was very clear to him that his father was completely changed. He was different. On the other hand, he hoped that this very refusal of his father, as well as the malice with which he treated him, would arouse suspicion in others.